Vandana Vasudevan graduated from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and worked in the corporate sector for many years. She shifted career tracks and became a development sector professional, consulting for various national and international organizations after obtaining a PhD in urban development from the University of Grenoble, France. She is the author of Urban Villager, Life in an Indian Satellite Town 2013, Tough Customer 2014, and OTB Please, Online Buyers, Sellers and Gig Workers in South Asia 2025. She has written extensively for mainstream newspapers and was a columnist for several years for Mint and TNE. This session is being moderated by Sudhakar Rao, an alumnus of IIM Bangalore and MIT Sloan, is Director of Branding at ICFI. He leads strategy for 11 universities, 9 business schools, multiple tech and law schools, mentors startups and speaks globally on innovation. He also chairs FICCI's education community. He is a CK Prahlad Chair Awardee for Marketing 2024, Dun & Bradstreet Marketing Maverick 2024, and Brand Strategist of the Year 2025 by Flux Awards Hong Kong. He has authored 6 books, including The Man Who Saw Tomorrow, The Untold Story of NJ Yasumi 2026. He trekked to Everest Base Camp in 2023, to Machu Picchu in 2025, and has cycled for almost 13,000 kilometers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Santosh and Vandana. Welcome to this conversation, and good afternoon to all of you. This conversation is going to be for about half an hour or so. Is that okay? We will have questions for audience at the end of it, but I want to thank the audience now itself for having shown up. We have one common question for both of them, then we have one individual question for each one of them, and then one converging question for both of them. And after that, you can actually ask your questions directly. This is about, the premise is the book authored by Santosh. This is Memes for Mummiji, Making Sense of Post-Smartphone India. This is a very interesting book, largely drawn from the columns written by Santosh. And I have always admired his columns. I have always looked forward to reading his columns. And also premised on this book, OTP Please. I have done a couple of conversations on this book earlier with Vandana. This is an admirably amazing book given the fact that it was written covering a few countries, not just in India. Research conducted across India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and probably a few other countries. But an amazing story on gig workers, in work itself, and how it is shaping some of our behaviors. Okay. Now, the topic of our conversation is digital selves and the tectonic shifts. TECH, tectonic shifts. We are living in a country with more than 900 million internet users and roughly 500 million active social media identities, which makes it the digital life or the digital behavior not a niche anymore, but it is almost mainstream. The way it is shaping how we think, how we work, and how we relate to other people and to various other situations in this country. On the other hand, we have 7.7 million gig workers. The Indian gig economy is equivalent to 7.7 million workers. It is projected to grow to 23.5 million by 2030. So when we talk about digital selves, we are talking about actually millions of digital livelihoods. Now, the question to both of you, Santosh and Vandana, is that when technology has entered our lives so much, and our identity so much, and our income so much, what kind of society does it begin to produce? Just give us an overview so that we start off from there.
Yeah, thank you, Sudhakar. I think it's interesting, one of the things to acknowledge about digital technology, as against all previous technologies, is that unlike other technologies that helped our lives, facilitated our lives, digital is a world we live inside. So this is a technology that just doesn't help us from the outside. It's a technology that we live inside. I think that's a profound difference between, we don't live inside a fridge. We don't live inside, any other of the previous technologies, but we live inside digital technology. Which means that we frame our response to the world, and our relationship with society is mediated through this form. And therefore, it's almost like this is the device that we have now to engage with the outside world, and in turn, it's a one-on-one relationship that we have with this, every one of us has with the outside world. So I think what it is doing, I think it is affecting society or creating society of a certain kind for one. I think it's important to recognize the fact that through human history, never have the means of broadcast ever been democratized. Always the means of broadcast have been very tightly controlled. Who gets to speak to a mass audience is always a subject of great, it is controlled by the powerful. There are always gatekeepers. If you look back in our own lives, my life, for instance, if I look back on, when I was younger, how many opportunities would a common person like me have to, have my voice? In a daily newspaper, there were 3 letters to the editor. Right, 3 people could get to speak among the entire universe. Or you could send in a request to say Vidit Bharati for a film song. Right, request. That is about the limit to which ordinary people could have their voices heard. Once in 5 years, we got to know. That's about it. Suddenly, we have created a society where everything speaks, where everyone has a microphone. This means that the level of the knowledge level of society has dropped dramatically. Because in an earlier time, the knowledge level of society was controlled by, it was elitist, but it was always filtered. You needed to be somebody, you needed to prove that you have the right to be heard. Today, everybody has the right to be heard. It is automatic. Which means the level of discourse now is pitched at the lowest common denominator. Right. This creates a society where everybody is talking simultaneously and nobody is listening. Everybody at the same time is using and speaking from their most primal instincts. So I think that is what we are seeing globally. We see it in Trump's America, where what we are seeing is the fact that the most primal emotions are governing policy. The fact you did not give me a Nobel Prize, I will attack your country. Which is a ridiculous thing. I mean, to imagine the president of the largest and the most powerful country in the world reacting like a baby, right? But that's not an isolated instance. Trump may be the most extreme manifestation of this. But in our everyday life, we are seeing outrage in the smallest thing, hyperbole in everything. So here's a society on hair trigger. That's what we are creating. We are creating a connected society, but we are also creating a society where all of us live by hair trigger emotions, and where it's a noisy place where everybody speaks and nobody listens.
Wonderful. I think 2 points that I take away from this is that democratization of information and knowledge, and the other one is also almost it's a parallel. It is unbridled emotions coming to the fore. I think these are the 2 important takeaways, and that is shaping how we react to various political, non-political, social, cultural events that are happening around us. Vandana.
Hello? Yeah. So, my book's canvas is about apps that we use in day-to-day life, like our delivery, food delivery, quick commerce, travel, Uber, Ola, all of those kind of things, and how that has shaped ourselves, the way we work, live, eat, travel, how that is shaping us, our families, our society overall. So in my view, I think to answer Sudhakar's question, in my view, I think we are becoming a pampered society, especially the middle class like us, who are the consumers, who use these apps as consumers. Ever since liberalization happened, we have been increasing, we have become a consuming class slowly. But never before have we become such a privileged consuming class, which has to merely sit at home and tap a few keys and things just arrive magically at your doorstep. So this has been normalized ever since the doorstep delivery economy got established in India, right? Which was just about some 4-5 years ago, post the pandemic. And even about a decade ago, if you told people that absolutely anything, ranging from a packet of milk to an iPhone, can come to your house in some 10-12 minutes. It used to be 10 minutes, but even now, even if it is 15, it's very fast. Right? People would not have believed it. And this convenience comes to us at the cost of a whole lot of, he said 7.7 million, but apparently a new study pegs the number of workers at 1.2 crore. So that many human beings are, helping this digital economy. That's the last leg of the digital cycle that we have. The order on the phone, everything, the restaurant gets the order through the app, everything happens. But this last leg, at least until the drones come in, is through humans. So our privilege of getting everything at our doorstep rides on the backs of numerous workers. One thing, we are becoming an extremely pampered and privileged kind of society. That has its own consequences. So, for example, how families eat nowadays is changing a lot. So there is a report called "Is the Kitchen Dead?" So the kitchen, and in places like Singapore, which depend a lot on apps, the kitchen has literally shrunk because either people are ordering out or they're picking up stuff when they're coming from office. So houses are having smaller and smaller kitchens for just basic things like making a sandwich or boiling milk or something. That would be really sad because the kitchen is also a place where people have cooked for ages. It's a place of creative expression for women, for nourishment, for sharing, for love, all of that. But as more and more we depend on outside food, so there's a section in my book called "What Happened to Maa Ka Khana." Maa Ka Khana is getting replaced by "Kisi aur ke maa ka khana" or "Baap ka khana," whatever. So we are making all this food and we are getting it. So family structures, how we conduct ourselves within the house, all that is changing, and there are many more ways in which we are changing. I'm just mentioning two. Even if you look at the way young people they order food and then they're sitting on their laptop and they're sitting somewhere inside the room. So whereas the dinner table used to be a sacrosanct place for families to sit together, chat, share their daily thing, more and more that is getting splintered and people are living atomized lives. There are other good things that have also happened by technology, but we will not eat up the time. So.
Wonderful. Pampered lives and atomized behaviors in terms of being aloof from what once used to be a dining table moment is now there any longer. The kitchens are kind of a scenario. Wonderful. The public debate that's going on about the gig work, Vandana, I'll come to you, is that in a low opportunity country like this, any job is a good job. I mean, that's the perception. Now, I have recently read this article, which I am sure you all would have read that. It is our favorite Ambi Parmeshwaran's article. And I quote that while the platforms all put together create millions of jobs, which we talked about, gig workers feel exploited. Service fees are falling, incentives are opaque, and the switching platforms actually doesn't improve their situation. Now, based on your work on this book, ODP Please, some job is better than no job. Is it a fair defense of the platform capitalism, or it's a dangerous way of lowering our, say, moral expectations of work and work sphere?
Hello? Yeah. So, recently there was a strike on 31st December and about 2 lakh workers went on strike. So, there are various problems with gig work, but let me tell you at the core what it is. So, at the core, these people are working for 12-14 hours for the company. But the company is saying, you are not my employee. So, therefore, I will not, invest in you, I will not train you, I will not give you any social security, pension, health, whatever, which normally employees get. The other side of the argument which platforms are saying is that you are independent, you are not working only for Zomato, you are also working for Swiggy. So how are you my employee, right? So why should I really invest in you, why should I do this stuff for you? So these are the two sides of the argument. This is not in India, this is an international thing. All various countries have grappled with it. Some have put laws which say that you ought to, for example, Spain has said, has signed an agreement with their leading food delivery platform saying there should be a certain number of hours that they work for, there should be minimum wage, there should be a fixed amount of money that you're giving so that the whole thing is not variable. Whereas some other countries, like say Australia, have said that no, he's an independent guy. Right? So our workers are saying that if I was independent, then why are you monitoring me so much? So previously also we had gig workers. What is a gig work? A gig work is just something that you do for a short time and get paid for that task. So the plumber, carpenter who used to come to our work was also a gig worker. But he had the freedom to refuse. If he didn't want to work for me, he'll say, "Nahi madam, nahi karna hai." But this guy, if he keeps refusing, the algorithm at the back end is tracking how many refusals he has done, and then that is affecting the number of orders he gets and his performance. So this is the core of the conflict, right? And this is the conflict that is being said everywhere and is discussed. But what is unsaid and what we sort of learned, I was part of a survey of 5,500 workers that an NGO in Delhi did. And through that we learned something else, which is that this is the expressed problem. The other problem is about dignity. So when people have, when people are a plumber or carpenter or even farmer or anything, there is a skill involved, they are doing it and they are proud of that. This job requires no skill. You just travel on your two-wheeler and drop a packet. Santosh was at my book launch in Delhi and he memorably used the phrase, fax machines in slow motion. So what are gig workers? They just, in slow motion, they're just going and dropping something. So no skill is involved. And that really sort of hurts them because before they were, they were doing stuff which only they could do. And so that's the nature of the job. To answer your question, it's a great thing that they got this job when they needed it. But what is happening is that they are only doing this job for years and they're not moving up. They're not skilled, they don't have any future, once a gig worker, always a gig worker. It wasn't meant to be like that. It's an oxymoron, So permanent gig work is an oxymoron. It wasn't even meant to happen. That is happening and that is really the core of the problem.
Thank you, Vandana. I think there are many other issues related to gig work with respect to, say, tipping, with respect to policy makers doing enough. I'll come to that later. I don't want to make it Vandana heavy conversation. We'll go to Santosh as well. Santosh, what I really loved in this book, reading, and it played in front of my eyes when I was reading that particular chapter, is the power of melodrama. From your own words, please explain to it, right from being a kid to now, this melodrama plays out superbly well for us. For example, cricket match is going on television and there's a break. We get into the gully and start playing cricket. All of us, even now, all of us are watching cricket everywhere in our respective homes. But in the WhatsApp groups, we put the scores, we put all opinions there. So, I think in his own words, we deserve to understand the power of melodrama. It's explained very well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, even in the book, I talk about this experience I had, strangely in London, with an Iraqi cab driver. This was an Iraqi cab driver who was telling me, and who started a discussion about Hindi films with me. And he was obviously a connoisseur. And he was talking about the relative merits of Devendra versus Amitabh Bachchan, and he had very strong point of view on all of this. But the point he made, which I thought was quite interesting, was saying, what has happened to your films? Earlier they were so powerful, they were so emotional, there was such storytelling, and now it's all very sad. It's all very simple. It's become very devoid of any of that larger than life kind of the drama that used to exist. And I think this is something that you also, one of the reasons why you find Hindi cinema struggling and other regional cinemas, notably from the south, not struggling, is because you find that the fundamental importance of the power of melodrama, the power of heightened emotional storytelling is missing. And I have another explanation for this, which comes back to technology and how technology affects the way we perceive things. What has happened today is that we've created two kinds of time. There is hard time and there is soft time. Hard time is the time we always had, where we allocate a fixed time to something. Like you are right now in hard time. Right? You are stuck here for the next 45 minutes or however much, listening to us. You are, most of you, as I see, are not doing anything. But soft time is those of you who are on the phone. Right? Those of you who are on the phone, that time where we are always on the phone while we are doing something else. We are not allocating time for the phone. Time is squeezing its way into whatever else we are doing. We are at a meeting, we are on the phone. Soft time. Right? More and more we find our life is turning into soft time. Right? And the thing about soft time is that it makes no demands on us. It is liquidy, so it's like you can spend a whole day going through reels. And if somebody asks you, okay, describe one reel that you saw, no memory. Right? Nothing. It is just something that keeps going and it washes over you, right? What is happening in cinema, I would argue, in this cinema, is thanks to the multiplex phenomenon, we started creating a whole lot of films that were very, very kind of much more realistic storytelling. And in the early days, this was lauded, the Dil Chahta Hai, Wake Up Say, the whole kind of films which are more about urban issues. But I would argue that these are soft time films, not hard time films. These are films you can watch on television while scrolling through your phone. They don't require, they are not immersive. You are not transported inside them. Unlike the kind of cinema that you see, the few films that do well are the ones, Dhurandhar, for instance, the kind of film where you cannot but locate yourself within that story. So the power of melodrama actually is the power of it. It recognizes the fact that for us, cinema is always much more than storytelling. Always. In Hindi. That's why the formula for films in India is always about very, very powerful things like Lost and Found. Right? You have that the family's honor is at stake. Where we are all battling for emotionally significant things. When it starts being because the boy cannot decide whether he should propose to a girl or not, it does not seem emotionally significant. It is here tomorrow problem, you handle it. I mean, what's the big deal, right? What you want. So I think, and it also speaks to technology, because I think more and more, what we now will only allocate hard time for things that we have a much more higher rated standard for what we allocate hard time to. We will not allocate hard time to things that don't really move us, as the size of this audience demonstrates.
Before Sudhakar you ask the question, let me just share something interesting which I read, taking off from what Santosh just said about soft and hard time. So the actor Matt Damon, right, Hollywood actor. So a few days ago I read in the paper that he was saying that platforms like Netflix and all tell scriptwriters now, please repeat the core plot a few times during the thing, because people are not really listening, people are on their phones. So unnecessarily during a story, the plot gets repeated. That is one thing. Then he said another point that in the end, there used to be this finale in the end, right? And everyone waits for that. Saying, please don't platforms are saying, please don't do that. In the first 5 minutes, show us the maximum action. Because that's when people will decide whether they want to be there or not. So that's the attention span that is there.
That's a very good point. Thank you. We'll stay a little bit more on the melodrama, Santosh, if you permit. We'll take one more layer into the melodrama. I was recently listening to Shobha Dey on her book, and she said that the Indian women, both rural and urban, are forever suspended between guilt and shame, and that seems to be slowly changing in the current scenario. And one example that she gave is that the way the tier 2 town or tier 3 town women are making the reels while doing their chores around. For example, they are in the kitchen or they are watering the plants or they are tending to their kids. But at the same time, they make the reels and they are no longer carrying the guilt. Are there any tectonic shifts in our culture or in our behavior that you have noticed that you can help the audience understand as part of the umbrella discussion that we have?
Yeah. So we do, even in my professional life, I travel a lot, speak to people, trying to understand how, society is changing. And I think always, through the years, whenever we travel, the one thing we find more than anything else, the one change that is always the most dramatic is the change in women. Across the country, the most profound change we are seeing is the change in women. And this change is, has many dimensions to it. One, I find that there is an enormous self-confidence in the women, and the doubt, if any, is not about themselves. The doubt is about the external environment allowing them to do what they want to do. It is always about, I hope my father allows me to go and study in a neighboring town. I hope my husband allows me to work after getting married. It is those kind. It is never that I am not capable of working. I am not capable of doing well or studying somewhere else. Never self-doubt. Always a sense of allowing, hoping constraints will soften. The other thing that you notice about young women in India, is the fact that for the first time you see that there is a willingness to evaluate men. Not only a willingness, evaluate men. And this drives men crazy. Men in India are not used to being evaluated by women. They are not used. They have always been the presumptive, the Mata Dandas. They have always been the apple of the eye of the family. They are always, the family is always grateful that it's a boy. The boy always has got the center of the attention. And therefore, when the boy needs rejection or even evaluation by women, there is a great sense of anxiety that this creates. We've seen this in married couples, where if the wife kind of matter-of-factly evaluates the man gets destabilized. We've seen the reaction can either be of the man withdrawing, which is not very common. The more common is a more aggressive reaction, and we are seeing that in society. We are seeing in the kind of cinema we are producing. We are seeing it in the hyper-masculine discourse that we see around us. We are seeing the fact that so many people today, their beards, men, it's almost like a kind of a male kind of posturing that we are seeing that is taking place. But there is this, the thing is, in India, what we call middle class values is nothing but the protocol that we follow to keep women in check. When a family says we come from a good middle class family with good values, fundamentally they are saying we have figured out how to keep our women in check. That is code that is used in Indian families. That code is beginning to lose. That code is beginning to loosen, and because it is such a foundational basis of society, when that shifts, it is deeply unsettling. And I think what we are seeing now is an effort by men to reclaim their position. Politically, it's a masculine discourse. Culturally, you're beginning to see a masculine kind of reaction and a backlash to the fact that women are changing the rule and men are finding it difficult to handle.
Amazing capture, and it is fundamental now, and it is unsettling a lot of us in the way we actually even access this, embrace this, and probably do something about it. I don't know, but these are the next few steps. So I'll come to Vandana about one out of the syllabus question. The out of the syllabus question is how do we deal with the digital self that we are seeing in the current Indian Zen Alpha or Zen Z? Vis-a-vis your children, vis-a-vis those teenagers, how are parents supposed to actually grapple with them, handle them? Is there any role for the parents to actually perform, or just an observation and then go away observing? Is there anything that parents can do?
I mean, your question assumes that there is something to do, like something is happening and therefore we must control that, right? So, I don't know what we can do in terms of, for example, in terms of food ordering. Like, so in my own house, so I'm thinking about in the book also. So in my own house, actually, there's not like so much of inclination to keep ordering out. But as a mom, whenever my son, who's the only one who orders out, is 18, I immediately tense. I'm like, no, why? I can make this for you. Why not? I can make a pasta for you quickly. Why are you ordering out? So there is and then I can go down to saying that there's protein in this also, and whatever protein is what you're seeking. But I can see that I'm unwilling to sort of cede space to the outside forces which are coming into my house and sort of taking over my table and kitchen. Right? There's a real threat of that. But so I'm not sure how much we can do. I think the technological tide is huge. And in terms of food ordering, other than thankfully there is a counter.
But they don't talk to many people. They don't talk to parents. They close their, as you mentioned, they close themselves in a room and they don't come to the common point.
Yes. Thankfully, however, I'm also seeing that there is a whole lot of counter force, you can say, which is about from the point of view of health. I think a lot of people, even youngsters, are understanding what is bad for them. And I'm saying from my own house, what is bad for them, that they need this is how you have to, they're counting calories and they're tracking steps and they're doing all those things. So technology is helping them do that. But the good part is that there's an awareness also about food and about what nutrition and stuff. And so the parents' role, I think, is getting more and more limited. And there is a sense of isolation when people keep on eating alone and within the house. But can I also add that as a parent, I have been extremely happy with what technology has done in education. So, the kind of completely democratized learning, and what students cannot understand in school, they only learn through YouTube videos, which are not even in English, which are in Hindi, and therefore way easier to understand. So entire syllabus is covered through YouTube videos, from things like Physics Wala and all those YouTube, which have made education, which have made learning extremely comfortable. So as a parent, I'm happy about that what tech has done for learning.
Thank you, Vandana. I think that defines more or less what are the ways in which technology is defining us, shaping our behaviors, the way we look at various social, cultural, economic activities from our home and outside our homes and offices as well. We are talking about Rajinikanth's histrionics as melodrama, which we imbibe very well. Cinema is doing very well. Balakrishna, Akhanda, you must see this movie. Both are not same kind of dialogues. The entire theatre is in rampage, and I watched there. Sometimes the screen gets blocked because of the confetti that refuses to come down. And this has not happened some 20 years back. It happened last year. And this year again there was another movie. And those movies seem to be doing really well, and I completely agree with Santosh in painting that picture of the consumption of melodrama in our psyche, in our lives is much better. And Rajamouli's movies where you touch someone, there's a spark. And 400 years of connection coming alive once again. We want these kind of movies. That involvement is very good. I know we have to open it for questions, and this is an introduction for making them to ask questions. Please ask your questions. We will take 3 questions maximum. Yeah, one. to, yeah, you should be listening to your child. You will ask the question. Okay, you resolve that, we will do that.
My question is for Santosh. Great talk. You mentioned the democratization of information, knowledge, the democratization of knowledge. I heard somebody from across the border. He said it very well. आजकल की generation information को knowledge समझती और connection को relation समझती, and that connection could just be something as simple as an Instagram follow. So I fully agree with you. You know, it's decreased attention spans. Even South के cinema का भी बोले. South के cinema में there's a lot of reading culture in Tamil Nadu, Kerala. That's why the movies are even better. But attention spans are decreasing. I totally agree with all of what you said. But there has been one good thing about the democratization of information. The one case study is Gaza. Palestine ke मामले में, usually it was the Zionists who had a big control of the media. And by Zionists, I'm not conflating them with the Jewish population. So that's one good thing that's come out of, you know, this democratization. Instagram ke zariye, Facebook ke zariye, we finally have broken the narrative that the Zionist media has had for 70 years. And now people are questioning. So my question is, what other good things do you see coming out of this democratization of information?
No, I think there are several good things that come out of this. Right? I think there are a lot of marginalized voices that get heard. You know, you see a lot of Dalit voices that get heard, which you never saw mainstreaming. The fact that, you know, citizens and citizenry as an idea gets a concrete form through the fact that you have direct access to, you know, global kind of broadcast audiences. So to my mind, you know, in any of this, in fact, the larger point I would make is that when it comes to digital, it's a conflicted form, right? It is shallow in its deep. It breeds shallowness, but there are amazing rabbit holes into which you can go. You are interested in early 20th century Carnatic music in a particular region, and you will find a rabbit hole, right? At the same time, its overall effect is to make things shallow. It breeds connection. The fact is that you are connected with your larger family today much more than you were earlier. You know, there's obscure cousins who are part of your group that you suddenly discover, okay, not a bad person, right, etc. On the other hand, as you said, you know, you mistake connection for relationship, right? So it's interesting how even the nature of the internet, it breeds these paradoxical, and at a meta level in a sense, I think what it does is that it transforms the individual and it changes the individual in many, many progressive ways, but it regresses society at a collective level. At an individual level, it is transformative. At a collective level, it is regressive. It actually, the more primal emotions are what we kind of come in tribalizing us all over again. So it's very interesting that in a variety of ways, we see this kind of a dual movement in the digital world. One way forward, two steps back, right? That's the kind of pattern that we see very often.
Thank you.
Hello. That's a wonderful description. Individually progressive but collectively regressive. That's where we are probably looking. But this democratization of information, access to voice your concerns against the political setup is actually not seeing the light of the day. For example, if anything happens in this country where you need to voice your concern about something wrong, an unlawful enforcement of something on an individual's liberty, it dies within the first round of its attempted virality. It doesn't actually go far. Because the forces that are enforcing these things also have a social media army to silence you down. And it doesn't go. I think that there is another discussion that is required to be done in that area, but that is also the point to take note of. Ma'am, I have to come to you. Any questions? I have a lot of questions. I'm not a lot of questions. You have to ask sharp questions. Ma'am, park this with yourself. The tipping point is that in India, the tips that we give to gig workers is around 5 to 10% of the value of that product or service, whereas in the US it is around 15 to 20%. And the recent survey that is conducted by people, they say that they enjoy the flex working, although they did not say so much about the difficulties that they are facing as part of the gig as a structure itself. We will come to that, but Diwakar, sharp question, no observations.
This is Diwakar, very enlightening session. For Santosh, we have listed out issues. Is there any insights or inputs you have mentioned to bring the digital detox, especially the kids and younger generation? That question is for you. And for the gig working, already we are writing the drone policy, and we will be among 3-4 nations which is going to be announcing the drone deliveries. So how the transformation is required in this terms of gig work and upgrading skills?
Yeah, so on the digital detox front, there are, in fact, globally now there are a lot of concerns about this. There is this very influential book by this writer called Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation. And that has created, I think, a groundswell of support for actions to limit use of digital devices up to a certain age. So we see that very active in Australia, we see that in certain states in the US. On the other hand, we've also done some work among parents in India, and what we find that parents really struggle with this question. They struggle with this question because they recognize that without familiarity with the digital form, their children will be obsolete, in a sense they will be out of touch in the new world. So they know that you cannot deprive them of this world and the connection with this world. But they also know that if it exceeds a certain limit, it is detrimental to them. Their problem is they don't know how to manage it. And I think most parents face this dilemma. And so policing is done, but it's soft policing. It's not hard policing because they are not confident themselves. They themselves don't know, how to control it, what to control, and therefore it is just right now the force is so strong, and the child's insistence on it is so great that parents are finding themselves helpless. So I think that is so at a certain level, if this has to happen, it is easier to do it collectively than to hope that individual after individual will detox. It has to happen at a policy level. Schools have to mandate it, colleges have to mandate it. That is a likelier intervention than parents being able to successfully manage and negotiate it with their children.
Excellent, thank you. You can answer the drone thing along with your perception on how these gig workers or gig space emerging in other countries with respect to dignity, with respect to compensation, even with respect to the tipping point that I mentioned.
So the drone thing is, I think we're a few years away from drone completely taking over all our delivery work. If it happens, there is, it's a good thing because the 1.2 crore people will be left to do other things. But what other things? Do we have enough jobs for them? Or because at some level, gig work is helping them earn a livelihood, right? And the trouble is that it's extending too long, and it wasn't meant to be such a long thing. And that points to the lack of other opportunities that are there in the economy for them. That's why they're doing gig work, right? So when drones come, it will do something which actually is not a very dignified job for a human being, right? It's not using that human being's full potential. But at the same time, from an economic point of view, I'm not sure what we will do. We have a whole lot of unemployed people. This needs attention because it is the government which is encouraging drone also, but I'm not sure they have thought about the fallout of that. So how will these people be absorbed and what sector? For example, education would be a great sector to absorb them. Government schools are lacking good teachers and maybe they will be trained. But this needs far more insight, and we have a few years before drones completely throw them out. And saying about other countries. So in my book, I also did other, not just India, but like Sudhakar mentioned, all the neighboring countries. So interestingly, there was some good stuff to learn from there. which platforms there are doing. For example, there is a company called Daraz, which is like Amazon but in Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So they pay their workers a fixed amount so that and they also cover fuel costs. So when fuel costs, so that even if fuel costs rise, the worker has some backup. That things like that are there. Then there are people. In Indonesia, there is a company which provides rest spaces for workers. So there are good things to learn from.
Yeah, we will take one last sharp, intelligent question. Kindly stand up. So the mic comes to you.
You define the length.
Sure. So when I think I am sharp and also intelligent both, hopefully, well, I just want to ask you all, are we on a phase wherein we are going back to history? Are we on a phase where we are going back to history and not going into all this stuff like this again? Because often there is a talk about food being not hygienic and food served by wrong fellows, wrong persons, young workers, skilled workers. And there is a thought that again we should have our values back, human touch, all those things, human values intact. So maybe we are on a phase where, because nowadays we are seeing as word where even the very word OTP gives you a scare. So people don't want to lift the phone whenever there is an unknown number. So maybe we are on that phase, on the short phase, where we are going back to the history of human touch, human values and human within the family. Yeah, what's your take on that?
So traditionally, for example, we have always been a society where, our food has always been amazingly balanced, which is embodied in our thali. Like you have a little of everything and all your protein, carbohydrate, everything is covered, including in Nepal. If you go to Nepal, in Kathmandu you will see these Thakali restaurants. Thakali is a community which has started, like our Udupi people, they have started these restaurants which offer the most amazing balanced thali. So it's there in our the indigenous culture of this region. So like I said, there is a movement, you see Rujuta Vivekar and all the people, they say that get back to what your grandmother was eating, get back to local food, don't order fried chicken at midnight and confuse your body's circadian rhythm. So there is a lot of people, again, their voice is heard through technology, broadcast through YouTube and Instagram, that think of what you're doing, be mindful, etc. Similarly, the isolation that technology is bringing, that we talked about, of late, I have been seeing reels. I see a lot of reels too. So I have been seeing reels where, in Hyderabad, people are just jamming together. Like I'm really happy to see that. In this Banastali Stepwell, is there in Hyderabad?
Yeah.
So people are just, young people are getting together, either they are singing, jamming bhajans or something else, or there's a small dance performance. Then there are people who are meeting in every Sunday and running, and after that just hanging out at a coffee shop. So all this shows a desire for reconnecting with human beings. So it may be the start of something else. And I also see young people a little bit of fatigue sometimes about the digital world and a need to connect again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful conversation on digital selves and the tectonic shifts. I now request the esteemed authors to come forward and hold their respective books and take a great picture with their moderator.